Unveil the truths of war crimes and justice in Gaza-Israel, a vital insight into a world grappling with accountability. Welcome to our in-depth exploration of the complexities surrounding war crimes and accountability in the Gaza-Israel conflict. This ongoing conflict has led to accusations of war crimes on both sides, raising critical questions about international humanitarian law, accountability, and the protection of civilians. In this video, we'll delve into the obligations of nations and combatants, examine who can be held accountable, and discuss what constitutes a war crime. So, without further ado, let's begin. International Humanitarian Law. The history of international law regulating warfare stretches back to the First Geneva Convention of 1864, a milestone in the efforts to protect civilians in times of conflict. However, it was the horrors of World War II and the subsequent Nuremberg trials that emphasized the need to expand and enforce the rules of war. The 1949 Geneva Convention played a pivotal role in establishing Article 3, which delineated the obligations of governments and militaries to minimize civilian casualties and the suffering of civilians during wartime. Fernando Travassi, executive director of the International Center for Transitional Justice, emphasizes that international humanitarian law sets boundaries on the use of violence in armed conflicts. This law is not the invention of human rights groups. It's a set of rules adopted by militaries themselves. Accountability under international humanitarian law. One of the key elements of international humanitarian law is the prohibition against deliberately targeting civilians. Violating this protection, such as the deliberate targeting of civilians, can lead to prosecution for leaders and common soldiers. This prosecution can be handled by international courts or any nation exercising universal jurisdiction, a principle that allows any country's courts to prosecute war crimes. This universal doctrine applies equally to Israel and Hamas, the militant group governing the Gaza Strip. Even though Israel, like the United States and Russia, is not a party to the Rome Statute establishing the International Criminal Court, the ICC has jurisdiction over the West Bank and Gaza Strip due to Palestine's membership. This means that both Palestinian and Israeli nationals can be prosecuted for war crimes. International efforts to address war crimes. The international community is actively engaged in addressing war crimes in the Israel-Hamas conflict. A significant player in this regard is the United Nations established body known as the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory. This commission has embarked on a comprehensive mission to collect and preserve evidence of war crimes committed by all sides involved in the ongoing conflict. Their work is integral in building cases against those responsible for violating international humanitarian law. Amnesty International, a renowned human rights organization, has been diligently documenting evidence throughout the conflict. Their findings indicated that Israeli forces have struggled to distinguish between military targets and civilians. Amnesty International has also called on Hamas to release civilian hostages and cease the indiscriminate firing of rockets. What constitutes a war crime? In the fog of war, civilians can often find themselves in harm's way, which complicates the decision-making process for military leaders. However, the principles of international humanitarian law are clear. Civilians should never be targeted, and attacks should not have a disproportionate impact on the civilian population. According to Kenneth Roth, a visiting professor at Princeton School of Public and International Affairs, the premeditated, planned, and deliberate killing of civilians is a clear war crime. The October 7 attack by Hamas, targeting Israeli civilians, resulting in casualties and hostage-taking, undeniably falls within the definition of a war crime. Even though Hamas is an irregular force, it is subject to the same international humanitarian law as the Israeli Defense Forces. Challenges in applying international humanitarian law. The practical application of international humanitarian law faces significant challenges, especially in densely populated areas like the Gaza Strip. Military decision-makers must navigate complex situations where civilians are often caught in the crossfire. The principle of proportionality, as outlined in the Geneva Conventions, demands that military actions must not result in excessive civilian harm compared to the anticipated military advantage. In the case of the Gaza Strip, where Hamas fighters operate within urban areas without uniforms, the Israeli military faces a daunting task in distinguishing combatants from non-combatants. While the difficulty in making such distinctions is recognized, it does not absolve the attacking party from its duty to protect civilians. This dilemma emphasizes the importance of stringent adherence to international humanitarian law, even in the most challenging circumstances. Recent evacuation orders issued by the Israel Defense Forces have been seen as a humanitarian gesture. However, the rapid nature of these orders has led to panic and chaos, raising questions about their effectiveness in safeguarding civilians. Accountability and prosecution of war crimes. The accountability and prosecution of war crimes are complex processes that involve international and national mechanisms. Gathering evidence of war crimes can be exceptionally challenging amid the chaos of war. Human rights activists, journalists, and organizations work tirelessly to document and preserve crucial evidence that may play a pivotal role in future accountability processes. This evidence is essential for ensuring that those responsible for war crimes are held accountable. Suspects can be brought before the International Criminal Court, ICC, at The Hague or ad hoc tribunals. The ICC encourages national governments to prosecute their own offenders, representing a shift from previous international tribunals like the Yugoslav and Rwanda tribunals, which had primary jurisdiction. While justice at the international level can be slow and complex, it remains a crucial avenue for accountability. An international arrest warrant can be executed by any of the 123 ICC member nations, obligating them to arrest the accused. However, it's important to acknowledge that prosecuting war crimes is a challenging endeavor. In any conflict worldwide, it is unrealistic to expect that every perpetrator will be prosecuted. Prioritization and selection of cases become necessary, often with a focus on holding top leaders accountable for their actions, while lower-ranking soldiers may evade justice. The ICC, though an essential tool in the fight against impunity, has faced challenges in achieving high success rates in prosecuting war crimes. In recent history, the concept of universal jurisdiction, which allows countries to try individuals accused of war crimes committed abroad, has gained prominence. For instance, in 1961, Israel exercised universal jurisdiction to try Nazi officer Adolf Eichmann for his role in the Holocaust and war crimes during World War II. His trial was broadcast worldwide, marking a significant moment in the pursuit of justice for war crimes. In cases where individuals accused of war crimes travel to a country that supports universal jurisdiction and is party to the ICC, they risk being arrested and prosecuted. This risk is significant enough to deter some individuals from traveling, as exemplified by the case of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who did not attend the BRICS summit in South Africa due to an outstanding ICC arrest warrant. Such developments underline the importance of international law in holding individuals accountable for their actions in conflicts worldwide. The allegations of war crimes in the Israel-Hamas conflict underscore the critical importance of international humanitarian law in protecting civilians during armed conflicts. Regardless of the complexities, accountability and prosecution for war crimes are crucial steps towards justice and maintaining the rule of law. If you found this video informative, then don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.